One of the most important things that you're going to learn in your teacher training program, or when you're learning to become a Pilates instructor, is anatomy, of course. And there's one part of anatomy that is extremely helpful, and that's it's a really, really good and helpful shortcut to understanding movement, to helping your students to analyze what's maybe going wrong in a movement or what somebody needs, and that is the planes of movement. And if you're probably like everybody else, you have real trouble understanding the planes of movement, and I don't blame you. That is because, in my opinion, in anatomy books, it's been explained, or it's explained in a really complicated, unnecessarily complicated way. It doesn't make sense for our brains. So I come up with a way to explain it that it makes a lot more sense, and that we get it immediately, and now we can actually use it and apply it. Yay, and our life has gotten so much easier. So I really hope that it works for you as well. If you need me to come up with another way to explain it, let me know. I'll try. Okay, so here it is. The sagittal plane, right? You've probably learned that the sagittal plane divides you in half. It cuts you in half. And I'd suggest you look at it, instead of a plane going through your body, imagine one on either side, right? So you have one side to your right, one side to your left, and imagine now you can only move within these two walls here, right? So what does that mean? I can move this way, I can bend forward and backwards, I can reach my arms forward and up. I can't move them out to the side. I'm stuck here because there's walls next to me, right? I can move them back. I can do the same thing with my legs. I can move my legs forward, I can move them back, but I can't move them out to the side. Perfect. And I can't even turn my torso because my shoulders are stuck, okay? Okay, so instead of one line, think of two lines or planes. Let's move on to the frontal or coronal plane. Supposedly that's a plane that divides the front and the back body in half. And instead it would like you to think about a plane in the front and one in the back. So now I'm stuck with my nose against the sheet of glass or whatever, and I can only move this way, right? So I can move my arms this way, I can move my legs this way, I can move my spine this way. Nothing else works. If I try and twist, then I'm going to hit the wall. I can't do that. Okay? All right. So that's frontal or coronal plane. Last plane of movement is the transverse plane. It's a little bit trickier, but now actually you can go back to what you've learned. So imagine that the plane cuts your spine, for instance, in half, and then right where that plane is, you can only move above it or below it, sort of, right? So now I'm twisting, maybe here, right? If the plane cuts through my hip joint, then I can twist it here, rotate. So rotation is the transverse plane. I can rotate my arms. There we go. So the transverse plane is rotation, and another shortcut that you might have learned is transverse has an R, so that's rotation, okay? Frontal plane or coronal plane is always abduction, adduction, or lateral flexion. And on the sagittal plane, it's always flexion, extension. Let's think about a few examples of exercises and apply that knowledge of the planes of movement. So imagine you're doing a standing leg pump on the chair. You're standing in front of the chair with your foot on the pedal, and you're pushing the pedal up and down. Right? So your hip joint is moving on the sagittal plane. Great. Let's imagine you're doing point and flex, or you're doing the Achilles stretch or ankle pump on the chair. Your ankle is moving on the sagittal plane. That's right. Let's see, maybe you do mermaid. You're going back and forth, right? You're moving on so your spine as well as your arms or shoulders are moving on the frontal or coronal plane. That's right. Maybe you're doing a side plank on the floor, right? That's, your arm is abducted, so that's the frontal plane. Let's say you do a side plank. Let me do it. Let me do a side plank. You lift the leg and you kick it forward and back. So your shoulder is now abducted on the frontal plane, but the leg that's kicking forward and back, that's actually moving on the sagittal plane. Excellent. Twist. So if you're doing your spine twist, anything that's twisting is always rotation. So that would be the transverse plane. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Feel free to ask about any other exercises in the comments so we can figure this out together.